So, they say comedy comes in threes, although I'm not a comedian, so I'm not quite sure where they get that from. But to stay true to that, we are indeed on episode 3 of our little 3-part series on building AI designed tanks in Sprocket. Well, I say AI designed. It's not like the AI built this tank. I did. But the AI told me what to build. I'd like to say again, I'm super happy with all of the awesome responses that I've been getting on this series. But I would like to make something really clear right out of the gate here. I've been receiving a lot of really amazing comments of people who have been loving the series and want me to continue, who have been making a lot of suggestions for new designs they could try out. Try asking the AI this, try asking the AI that. I really appreciate those suggestions. However, this is a 3-part series, and I only plan for it to be a 3-part series. For those of you who are discovering my channel for the first time through this series, I am not a Sprocket YouTuber. I really just love tanks. Anything and all things tank related. And you're just watching for Sprocket, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because I don't plan on making another AI Sprocket video, at least not anytime soon. This 3rd part is the finale. So this is the famed Italian inspired, or I should say Mediterranean. Again, swapping out France/Soviet influence. Now I said we are kind of in the Mediterranean. One of the major changes I really had to make to the prompt for this one was that in the other 2, I specified to the AI that we were going to be fighting the Germans. By the way, fun drinking game, take a shot every single time I say specified in one of these videos. I don't think any of you will survive that. But for this prompt, considering we are in the Mediterranean, and yes, we could be thinking of Greece, and they ended up being against Italy and against Axis powers. Italy in of itself, I think, is kind of the first nation that people think of when they think of tanks in the Mediterranean. I guess you could count Spain, and Italy, of course, was on the Axis nation side. So I had to swap the prompt around to say that the Germans wish to bring us into the Axis and fight alongside them in the Mediterranean for the upcoming war. The year is 1938, you've been tasked with a set of rules, yada yada yada, the same thing that I said before, basically. And we'll see this later in the design when I start painting it and putting the decals and stuff on it. This is not an Allied vehicle, this is going to be an Axis vehicle. Although it's going to be turned into an Allied vehicle by 1943 when Italy switches sides anyways, so I don't know if that matters too much. So the stuff that the AI spat out this time around was, again, pretty much identical to what it did for the first 2 prompts, and I have been instructed in the comments that that's probably because I was asking for a medium tank. I guess I understand that. Yes, I should have been asking for more variety, for a heavy tank, for a light tank, for whatever. I think my problem here was assuming that the AI was smart. I thought that the fun of this roleplay was going to be the AI should decide if this needs to be a heavy tank, a light tank, or a medium tank. I tried my best in the prompt that I give it. I try to tell it, like, what do you think our nation needs? I'm just the guy who builds it. I'm just the dude who puts this thing together. You, as the AI, you are the head of the armor board. Consider where we are, what year it is, what situation we're in, and what we're about to do. What do you think our country needs? And all 3 times the country said that it needed a medium tank. Now, I will say that I'm pretty sure in the first prompt I did specify that the AI should make a medium tank. In the second one, I can't quite remember if I said that it has to be a medium tank, but in this 3rd one, I didn't. I purposely left out medium tank. I said, just give me a tank. And it came back with maximum weight of 30 tons, which again, a weight this time around. We didn't have that on the first prompt, but we did with the last one. 7 meters in length, 75 millimeter gun, again, 50 millimeters of armor, again, and 400 horsepower diesel engine. Again, fair enough. I'm not too angry about that, especially because it kind of made this whole process easier. But of course, the AI did take into account where we were and what we were doing. In the engine category, it did say that the engine should be able of operating in extended periods in the heat and dusty conditions of the Mediterranean region without overheating or breaking down. So I try to take that into account when designing the engine deck, but that's all really aesthetic. Now, interestingly, in the armor category, the AI did say that the sides and rear can be thinner, but should still provide adequate protection against enemy machine guns and light anti-tank weapons. So lighter, faster, we are looking for something not quite as tough as the previous 2 designs. I think for the first design, we had a traditional medium tank. For the second design, we had something a little bit heavier, and now we have something a little bit lighter, which perfectly makes sense for Italy. But enough about this. I've been rambling for way too long, staring at the AI screen. Let's go to the tank. So this time around, I really only have one word: tankette. I think this was pretty obvious going into this with having an Italian/Mediterranean influence. I wanted something lighter, shorter, Tankette-esque, and instantly you can see the AI only told me that I needed to stay within 7 meters, which gives me a lot of length to play with this tank, and yet I still squashed it down and made it a tiny little guy, because again, I'm thinking of that smaller, lighter tank. I do love tankettes, well, not tankettes, I like smaller tanks for sure. I've said before in previous videos, and I think I may have said in one of the Sprocket videos, I actually don't know, that my personal favorite era of the tank is between 1935 and 1941, hence why I gave the AI the prompt of 1938. I've seen a lot of people in the comments say, make a late war super heavy, make a Cold War tank, make an MBT. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, those tanks don't interest me that much, especially not if I'm going to dedicate a lot of time to building my own tank. I want to do it in an era and in a style that I identify with and I really enjoy. So early war / interwar it was. So on my mind, this entire build are specifically things like the L33 and the 7TP. The 7TP was a big one because, I mean, I just love the 7TP and I love Poland. Shout out all my Polish viewers. Shout out Poland as a nation. I was fucking vibing with Poland before. It was cool and no one can take that from me. So I had tanks like the 7TP on here. I had tanks like, the fucking TKS as well. The TKS, of course. I mean, if you look, you can see what I'm doing with this front profile. To me, this looks very TKS. I'm trying to go with this asymmetrical, just really wacky design. I'm kind of thinking up there at the top, that flat bit is the driver's viewport, so he's like, off to the right and everything. And I want to go for that asymmetry, really weird hull, and really, really wacky angles for this small, condensed little nugget package of a tank. And for suspension, again, I wanted leaf springs. God, I really want leaf springs. I want leaf springs so fucking bad. Hamish, please, for God's sakes, add Heath Springs? What the fuck? Leaf Springs to the game. I decided to go for actually a bit of a throwback. I picked these tracks because I think they look cool, and then I have a really fucking silly idea to actually try to match my road wheels up to properly sit in the grooves of these tracks. I end up triple layering my road wheels just for this symmetry. In real life, is this a very practical solution for a suspension system? No, I do not recommend if you are building a tank that you ever do anything remotely close to this, because this is incredibly complicated. The only way I could make it worse is if I made them interleaved. But to me, it looked cool, and I figured it would give me good stabilization and potential speed, good performance. I don't know if Sprocket works this way anymore, but a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, more road wheels did allow your tank to go faster, have better acceleration, whatever. Actually, I think the size of your sprocket dictated your acceleration, and it was your road wheels that dictated your top speed, I believe. Now here on the engine deck, at this point in designing, like I said in the first episode, I'm not good at designing engine decks, but I get better at it because I designed all 3 of these tanks within the same day, or actually I may have done the first tank on one day and then the last 2 designs on the same day, but I was building tanks in Sprocket more frequently than I usually do, so I just was in my fucking mojo, and I got better and better at it, and by this point, designing engine decks is like something I'm genuinely enjoying. So the engine deck for this tank was a blast to build, and I got really creative with it. I know that I said I liked the engine deck of the last design, but this one really has something awesome that I'm really proud of. Firstly is something that I saw on Reddit, which was some guy who built a modern MBT, and he put those boxes on there and then took those vents, those grates, and shrunk them down to the size of the box and then plunked them on the back. It does look rather modern, but I think even here it still kind of fits. I wanted to have offset exhaust, but in doing so it would make the engine offset, and that ruins performance and ruins my immersion. So I put a second exhaust on the other side, but I don't make the same piece, and I do it very asymmetrically. And then here, I'm not sure why, but the Centurion entered my brain. I was thinking, what is a cool engine deck? Like, what are real life tanks that exist that, in my opinion, have really cool engine decks I can take inspiration from? And the Centurion came right to my head. Now, the Centurion is actually not at all the first tank to do an engine deck like this. I instantly think of the Matilda as well, and I think the Valentine. I'll have to leave a correction. I'm pretty sure the Valentine did this as well. This idea of, instead of having these 2 or, more large, heavy armored doors to get into your engine, instead you have a large series, a large number of very thin, long panels that you kind of lift up individually to get into the tank. So it makes it theoretically easier because each individual panel or door is smaller and therefore lighter. So it makes it easier on the single guy who has to do this maintenance. but of course it's a bit wacky, I guess. And so I actually bothered to recreate that style of doors on this engine deck. I put the little handles on there so that you can see that they're lifted, and because I built them out of like the M4A4 Sherman's fuel filler oil cap, I actually don't know exactly what that piece is, I put those panels on top of it to cover the filler cap so that they actually look like genuine panels, doors that you would open. And then with these ladder rung pieces, I put those little boxes in there and then put another box in there. I personally have no idea what that's even for. There's no canonical practical use for that. I genuinely don't know what that is. I just thought it looked cool. And then finished off with some extra stowage on the fenders, which I always like to do. And the turret. I did not know what I wanted with the turret. I genuinely didn't. I really didn't. I wanted a unique shape. I wanted to do something different from the other designs that I did. I tried going there. You can see I did like this like fat chin on the bottom. I wanted there to be more complex geometry. I wanted there to be something else to it. And I'm fucking around with this, and I'm just doing stuff right here, right? I think this really showcases something that I mentioned in the previous episode very offhandedly, was this idea that I'm not a good Sprocket builder. I'm not good at this. Like, a lot of people are like, oh my god, teach me your ways. I've gotten DMs from people on Discord and say like, teach me how to like judge my Sprocket tanks, please. And I want to stress right now to you guys that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Why do you think I asked an AI to help me build this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And so you can see this turret that I'm designing is not great. It's a Wally, maybe, or it's all sorts of weird. Ultimately, I end up ditching this turret, and specifically because I realized that the sides of this turret are concave, right? They curve inwards. And that is a complete nightmare for internal space, right? Like, the crews are gonna be all squished up inside this tank. Like, it's not gonna make any sense. So I end up scrapping this turret completely and go for something totally different. And again, I'm not quite sure what. And then I finally decide to start looking at fucking reference photos. First thing I do is do that front little bottom corner cheek piece that is on the Panzer IV. I just like that shape. I like that geometry, so I wanted to get that on there. And then the back of the turret, I decide to make Italian. Or actually, rather, I think I was taken from the 7TP for this one, where the 7TP, the front half of the turret is very boxy, and then the back half of the turret is a very smooth, completely rounded off rear surface. And that was, weirdly enough, a new concept to me, this idea of like, oh wait, my turret can be both straight and boxy and rounded off and curvy and shit. Like, whoa, wait a minute, I can have the best of both worlds. And then I build this bustle out of the actual hull of the tank to give me more internal volume. And I want to put stowage on the back of here. Specifically, I'm trying to get as Firefly as I possibly can, because everyone knows I love the composite Firefly. And I want to stick some really interesting stowage off the back that really like hangs well wide off the back of the turret. Nothing I end up do looks any good, so then I just end up grabbing the generic bin that roughly matches the shape of what I'm looking for. I delete that too. And then I end up going for the basket stowage, which I think is the correct decision. I think I end up making it look pretty nice here. And then the rest of this is just smoothing out the angles and such, making sure that I like the way that it looks, making sure that the design makes sense, and I'm really pleased with the result on this. I think I've said it again in the previous episodes, but I will say it again here, that this tank is my favorite. Of the 3 tanks that I end up designing, this one is my personal favorite. I'm the most proud of it. For the gun, I'm again trying to get creative and wacky with the barrel and have like certain recessed parts or recoiled parts, and I'm trying to build like interesting shapes out of it, and it's just not working, so I just go with just standard barrel. And I have the Sherman's mantlet at first, but I end up changing it because I don't like it. I just want to see how the other mantlets look. And I go for something pretty standard. I think I go for the Panther's mantlet here. I want to see if I keep this. It looks like I do. I could have gone for the Panzer 38T mantlet, or even the Japanese new Japanese mantlet was very enticing. I'm not gonna lie. To me, it looked very 7TP, but the description says it's from a Japanese tank. I forget which one. I think the Hago. But no, I end up going with Panther mantlet. It just looks the most traditional. It looks the most normal. And I don't want to overthink things, because that tends to be my problem with these designs. For the transmission here on the front, we do finally have a front-mounted sprocket. I actually made sure to make an attempt because I realized that my 2 other designs were both rear-mounted sprockets. So I wanted a front-mounted sprocket on this design so I could really make a genuine transmission access hatch on the front, like I did before. And here I take direct inspiration from the Italian M13 or M14. And then I drop the Panzer 38T cupola on here, and this is probably one of the best single decisions I make for this entire tank. Me personally, I think the Panzer 38T cupola just really brought this whole design together. Like the silhouette of this tank is really solidified once I threw that cupola on there. and I totally end up completely reshaping the side of the turret so I can, like, not completely reshaping, I have minor adjustments to the side of the turret shaping so that I can get it to kind of accommodate the bulginess of the hatch. I think I do a really good job with it. So then to make that transmission seem really pronounced, to show where it goes from being like a curved piece into straightening, I add the plank of wood, again, just like a Sherman, love me my Shermans, and I start riveting. Of course, this tank has to have rivets, because it's Italian, and because it's or Mediterranean, and it's 1938, but this design, I get a little bit wacky with my rivets, where I kind of have like an epiphany of rivets are not, like, a tank is not completely caked in rivets. They have rivets in very specific places where, surprise, surprise, you need the rivets, right? You're not unnecessarily using rivets. So especially on the front here, you see I start doing this wacky thing, which is I'm manually and individually placing these rivets, and I'm spacing them out. You know, I'm not going for just a full row length of rivets. I'm actually putting, you know, 2 at a time, 1 at a time even, in very, very tactical specific spots. I end up reconfiguring the front hole as well, because I think it just ends up looking a little too wacky and complicated for me, and also to make riveting easier and to really outline in my head where the panels, like what panels and components this tank is actually built out of. I simplify the front, so if any of you thought that looked ugly, don't worry, now it doesn't look as ugly. And take it for my first test drive. Being a lighter tank, it naturally handled a lot better right out of the box, but I still end up doing just a little bit of tweaking to make sure that I can get what I want out of it, being kind of a lighter, faster tank. And armor the tank to the AI's specs, 50 millimeters at the front, 30 on the sides. I think to keep this tank light enough, I just went with I just went straight schematics on this one. I didn't do what I did with the other 2 tanks, where, like, in some places I put 60 because I just thought it made more sense or whatever. Like, no, I went straight 50 on the front and straight 30 on the sides and rear. I didn't mess around with that because I just didn't think I needed to. Do some basic tuning for this tank. I didn't have to do all that much, really, mostly because it's just so small that it didn't need that much. It was a small, light tank, and all of the most basic engine and transmission configuration that I already had saved from the other 2 designs worked well with this. The only real major tuning hurdle I had to come over with this tank was the fact that the AI actually said that the tank should have a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour on flat terrain. I do end up doing a lot of tweaking with this. I guess I know I literally just said I don't do that much, but now that I'm rewatching the footage, I remember now that I did do a lot of tweaking with this, trying my hardest to balance the road wheels, the idler wheel size, the sprocket size, everything size. I lower the road wheels down to 2 pair, and I make them smaller, doing a lot of different things to make this reach 40 kilometers per hour. Sadly, in the end, I'm not able to do it. The best I can end up doing is 30 kilometers per hour, and I think that's just due to the engine limitations, and not engine as in like the game engine, as in the fact that this is 1938, it's an interwar design, the actual physical engine limitation. I'll admit that transmission and engine tuning has never been my strong suit in Sprocket. If anyone believes that just looking at my specs and looking at my tank here in the video, if you think you could have been able to get this to go 40 kilometers an hour, please let me know, and please let me know how, because I would be interested in going back and doing this right. And once I've kind of given up on that and I've just decided, well, the best I'm going to be able to do is 30 kilometers an hour, I end up finally going with decoratives and really start giving this tank personality. I think it's got character, but now it needs personality, which are the exact same thing. Shush, don't question it. The AI did request a coaxial machine gun, as the AI says, for anti-infantry and anti-aircraft defense. Not so sure about that one. And a roof-mounted machine gun. And this one is specified to have a machine gun. In the Commander's Cupola, point 2, the AI says the turret should have a Commander's Cupola equipped with periscopes, vision blocks, and possibly a machine gun. This would allow the tank commander to scan the battlefield and engage targets with the machine gun if necessary. Now, this is the first time out of the 3 prompts that we had that the AI specifically says, yes, put a machine gun on the roof for the commander to use. Particularly. And then finally, we have a design that calls for smoke launchers. Hooray! No longer just this generic smoke discharge system that we've been seeing. Now the AI says, get me smoke dischargers on the turret. So I am more than happy to oblige to that. Thankfully, the AI did not give me any necessary ammunition requirements at all. It only says 50 rounds for the main gun and 2,000 rounds for the machine gun, and 50 is a lot less than 75, so I think the AI is envisioning that this is going to be a smaller tank, and because of that, I'm able to stick all the ammo in the turret anyways, even though the AI didn't ask me to, and it all really just works out. You know, the tank is really starting to come together now. Also, something I totally missed, and like, I had to look back at the specifications to see this, but the AI says that yes, the gun should be a 75, but, quote, the cannon should be able to penetrate at least 70 millimeters of armor at 500 meters. Now for 1938, that's some pretty serious beeswax. And it also says that the main gun of the tank should be able to engage targets at a distance of at least 1,500 meters. I end up making the gun longer, way longer, to accommodate for that. And you know, for 1938, 70 millimeters of penetration at 500 meters and a maximum range of 1,500 meters, that's some serious business. You know, that is a real gun. And so I'm actually able to make this tank unique from the other two, and that this one is finally going to get a true, powerful anti-tank gun. And I think when you think about the design of this tank being this Mediterranean vehicle where you're sacrificing maneuverability and weight and armor, the one way that you really should be making up for that is in firepower. You know, I think this is a perfectly valid move. I think this makes sense. And so naturally, with this having such a weirdly long, you know, toothpick mosquito-like barrel, I decide to have a little fun with that, and I actually do a full custom travel lock on the front of this tank, which, like, I think it came out really, really well, and I'm super proud of it. Again, especially because it's not really something that I do very often, this like custom forging of, you know, specific parts that aren't in the game. Usually I just use whatever decorative parts are in the game, and if it's not there, then I say, oh well. But yeah, I wanted a big gun travel lock for this, and I took a stab at building my own. And yeah, I think it came out really, really well. Again, this is my favorite design. I think for that, I think the engine deck, the gun travel lock, the turret, I really like the turret on this thing. I genuinely might save that turret blueprint and use it on other stuff, because that turret looks really, really nice. I'm very happy with it. And the spaced route riveting and the amount of detail that I ended up throwing on this tank overall, you know, there's not any one specific piece of the tank that is super detailed and the rest of it is kind of meh. Like, I think this whole tank has a lot of detail on it, and it's just well built, you know. Like, fuck it, man, I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back for this. I'm quite proud of this tank. I think it came out really, really well. I don't have any like crazy creative ideas for the stowages like I did on the previous tank with like the overhanging track links, which I saw a lot of people in the comments say that they really liked that. They thought it was a neat idea, and they hadn't thought of that before, so glad I could introduce some of you out there to a concept like that. But now with this one, I mostly go crazy with the road wheels, especially because this tank has so many road wheels that I would imagine if these crews are going to be carrying spares of anything, I would picture that they would probably want as many spare road wheels as they can get their hands on. I throw some spare track links on the turret and include some ladder rungs to hang them there, but that's pretty much as deep as I go with spare track links, and mostly because there's just not very many places to do it on this tank. This tank has very large tracks, so each individual link for those spare track links are big, and there's just not many places to put them. So I kind of place them where I can, and then I leave it be. And finally, the paint scheme. At first I wanted to go with some kind of like orangey yellow camouflage pattern, some kind of like Mediterranean, you know, deep hue, but I just couldn't get any specific camo pattern to work with the tint that I wanted, so I just kind of ended up going with just a generic tan pattern, this like, you know, desert Mediterranean tan, make it a little bit beaten up, and something that I think a German or Axis powered tank would look like. And then for the first time, definitely for the first time in this series, and for the first time in a long time, I get to use Axis decals. I don't typically design Axis tanks, not for any real reason. I actually quite like the look of German tanks, but I often end up taking inspiration from like the British or the Americans, so having this be a truly Axis inspired was something I hadn't quite done before. And I finally get to make use of some of these administrative decals like I was talking about in the previous video. I've got this open to access transmission decal on the front, and then these decals, I totally forget where I got these, but these ammunition, these little stowage decals for 50 caliber ammunition and for just quote general storage, I think those are super cool decals. I really loved having them on there, so I popped them on there. Got this like measurement, like chalk drawing measurement decal. I think these are meant to be placed onto like tanks that are coming off the production line. You know, these remind me of like Tiger tanks or Porsche Tiger tanks on the production lines, and the red primer paint job with the chalk drawings all over it. So definitely not something that you would see on a finished production vehicle, but I kept them on there because I just think they looked cool. Shout out, by the way, to one of the viewers who actually dropped into my Discord DMs and gave me those Lend-Lease Sherman administrative shipping decals. Those were exactly what I was looking for, the ones that dictate like dry battery and coolant installed and all that. That was exactly what I was looking for, so super cool that somebody actually had those. I don't know if you made them for me or if you had them already, but super cool that you went through the trouble of at least giving them to me. And yeah, in terms of performance, this thing really came out as the glass cannon of the group, which is exactly what I wanted, right? We came out with what I think are three very special, three very unique designs. The first tank is a very well-rounded, decent armor, decent gun, good mobility, just, you know, kind of a medium tank. Our second design was something much heavier, something much slower, something much more formidable, I would say, than the first one. And our third design is a lighter, faster, heavy firepower tank destroyer for the Mediterranean. I think for all three of these tanks, I did a pretty good job at keeping with the themes that they were going to go for and sticking to the AI specs. Definitely, you know, that's where this all comes from. That's on a base level, I'm really trying to just stick to the spec. This has to be what the AI asked for, and I'm building this for the AI, let's not forget. I put the tank through its paces, I take this little tank through the scenario ambush, and absolutely decimate. I die on that first time, but then the second round, I just sit in a corner and I'm able to instantly plink, one-shot everyone, even the final boss tank from the very back of the map. And that was, to me, a huge testament to how effective I had made this cannon. Having like an actually good, proper tank destroyer cannon on this, it was genuinely good. So finally coming up with a name for this tank, the AI didn't really give me much room to work with. It gave me one single designation to use, Mediterranean M1 medium tank, which I think is taking my prompt of, you know, wanting a Mediterranean design a little bit too literally, but okay, we can call it that. And then for the nickname of the tank, Mediterranean Thunderbolt, which it's a cool name. Like the Thunderbolt is a pretty cool name. Mediterranean Thunderbolt is again a little on the nose, but that's okay. And of course, I did not want to disappoint you guys. I wanted to give an update on the second tank that we designed, which I know I said I would include an update on the tank in the second video because there were a couple things I wanted to change. And I did actually change a couple things about them. This is live, by the way. Hi, my name is Ed320. This is not post commentary. There were a couple things that I wanted to change with this design that I set off to right off the bat. Firstly was I changed the cannon to a proper 76mm because the AI did say in the second episode that it could be a 75 or 76mm gun. So although it's not visually any different, it is a 76, it has slightly more penetration, which is nice. So the gun performs a little bit better, but still not amazingly because again, I didn't want to turn this into a tank destroyer. I kind of wanted it to have a weaker gun. The biggest change that you probably notice instantly is I squashed the turret, because again, the chat AI did say that it wanted it to have a low profile, and like a lot of people pointed out in the comments, and I very much agree, this thing looks very much like an M6 Heavy, and I like that a lot about it. Like, M6 Heavy looks really freaking cool, but the M6 Heavy is also very tall. And so to give this thing a bit more of a low profile, I quite literally just squashed the turret. I think it ended up working. I think it was actually to the tank's benefit. You can see here, this is the old design. We have that much taller turret. And again, with that sort of shot trap right here in the neck. And if I go ahead and load up the, that one, you can see, yeah, shot trap is basically gone. It's still kind of there, but you know, this tank is much flatter to its turret. And I also just generally dropped the whole tank down. It is lower to the ground than the previous one. You can see especially the bottom of the hull. If I go here and then switch to switch to this one, I dropped the tank down in its entirety a little bit. I thought it rode just a little bit too high for what it was. As a result of this, now we have the fenders slightly clipping into the top of the road wheels, but that's not a huge problem. Overall, I think this did end up, I think this quote modernization, these very, very, very minor changes, I think we're successful, and I am happy with them. So now all that's left to do is rename this tank. I had called before that I thought Panthera was a bit of an odd name, and so I did call for a rename if anyone had any interesting ideas. Right now I've named this M1938 battle tank Panthera Mark II, but I do think this particular variant will get a rename from a suggestion in the comments. Shout out Jules Godefroy. I'm gonna assume that I said that right. Godefroy. Shout out to you for giving me a myriad of nicknames that I all really enjoyed actually. But I'm just gonna keep this simple, and I'm going to choose what I thought was, for me personally, the coolest one and fit this tank the best, which is Bastion. Bastion in English, but Bastion in French. Try that. Bastion. And still on the topic of the name, somebody else pointed out that M1938 battle tank is probably not a great name for a French tank, and you are very much correct. I agree with you, and I love your suggestion. Shout out to Enkelav. I'm just gonna call you Enkelav, who suggested the name of Char Model 1938, which is perfectly accurate for this because this is a French tank, which, by the way, in case you're wondering, does stand for Tank Model 1938. Char is the French word for tank, model is model, and 1938, Bastion. So this is the Tank Model 1938 Bastion. Thank you everyone in the comments for the suggestions, and holy shit, that's an Overwatch reference, isn't it? Bastion's the fucking robot in Overwatch who turns into a tank. God damn it.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way, yeah.
You gonna help us out?
And so, I think that brings this fantastic little 3-part series we had going to a pretty satisfying close. Like I said at the opening of this video, this is the 3-part series, and this is it. After this, I don't plan on making any Sprocket AI content. Not ever again, I will say. I mean, you know, I'm open to ideas later down the road if I ever decide to come back to Sprocket for content, but right now I have a lot of other ideas for videos that I really want to make. Obviously, this video has come out, 2-3 weeks after part 2, whereas part 2 came out, I think, like a week or 2 after part 1. That's generally because, like, I kind of just had some block making this video. I'm gonna be honest, like this video was taking me a little while to make, and I just sort of lost motivation, and then I did some other things and prepped for other videos and got excited about those, and this kind of lost my interest. But I'm finishing this video, obviously, because I want to see this series through. But yeah, I don't think I could make a part 4 of this, honestly, even if I tried. So what is next? Well, like I said, I don't usually do Sprocket content on this channel. I mean, Sprocket appears every now and then, but it's not my main focus. My channel is about tanks, just tanks in general. And quite recently, as of recording this about a week ago, I went all the way down to Georgia for an open house at Fort Benning and got to see a bunch of amazing and incredible tanks in person for the first time. It was honestly such an incredible experience, and I recorded my time there. So the next video after this one is going to be just a quick little, like, 1 episode, super quick vlog of all the coolest tanks that I saw out there. And then after that is the fabled T-34 video, because God knows that I need to get that video out and done, and I think I'm just going to abandon a lot of the ideas that I had for it, and I'm just going to finish it. And then after that, who knows? Actually, well, I know. I have a lot of ideas for future videos, but yeah, I'm currently just letting some, you're basically just watching me now go into the photo mode and hover around all of my tanks, not just the 3 tanks that we made for this series, but also some tanks that I made in Sprocket that I'm quite proud of. Right here, this has been the Centaur that you're looking at right now. This is a super cool tank, and I actually made a summary about my time building that tank on the Discord. If you want to go check that out in the Sprocket channel, it's in the pins. And this tank here is kind of a version 2 of a tank that I actually built on stream. A little bit of a plug for those of you who don't know. I do live stream. I have a second channel, Ed320 Live, and I live stream not strictly tank related things, but every now and then some of the streams that I do involve tanks in some way. The live channel I keep separate because I want to be able to do my own thing that's not tank related always. And for this stream, we played Sprocket because I hadn't in a while, and there was a big update. And I ended up building this tank, this what I've called the Shermwell. It is honestly, I think, my favorite tank that I've ever built in Sprocket. I think it looks incredible, and with all of the decals that fans actually paid attention to what I said in the previous video and asking for those Sherman Lend-Lease decals, and you can see there that they actually gave them to me, and they look amazing. I instantly stuck them all over these tanks where it made sense. And yeah, I love this tank. It's got the 2 cannons, very Centurion inspired. It's supposed to be like a late war, like 1945 kind of. It's almost like a weird Centurion alt history. If the Centurion was kind of more based on a Cromwell or a Comet, but then also had some Sherman influence in there, and it gets really confusing. But that's about all I have for this 3-part series. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I would do something extravagant for an outro, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm just kind of burnt out and out of ideas for that. So I just want to say thank you. Subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed the channel, enjoyed the video, and if you like this series, or you like me, or you like tanks, I suggest subscribing. I think you're going to like a lot of the future projects I have in store that I am very excited to finish and see through. But until then, my name has been Eda320, and I need to get a proper outro.